Hey retro fans, welcome to another episode of Retro Gaming Memories. In this episode we're going to talk about obscure or lesser known Sega Mega Drive titles. And by obscure I don't mean that these are rare games that are really hard to get or nobody's ever heard of them or the bizarre Japanese imports or anything like that. They're just games, I've got a little stack of them off camera here, excuse me. They're just games that you might overlook if if they were in a for sale somewhere, and you might overlook them because you don't have any familiarity with them or no nostalgia for them or something like that. They are games that they're not necessarily the best games. Some of them are quite poor, which you'll see later on. But they're all good fun to play. So somebody started drilling outside, which is useful. So we'll try and ignore that. They're all good fun to play, and hopefully you might see a game here that you fancy giving a go. So none of these, I'm just having a quick look, I've got them off camera here, none of these are expensive games by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll start off with this Game Ground. Oops, getting camera Dave, yes. Game Ground. Great little game. Not very well known. The artwork's fantastic. Have a look. Yeah, it's not very well known. I don't think. It received kind of average reviews back in the day, and I don't entirely know why. It's based on an arcade game that I found that out later on. But basically, it's the best way I can describe it is it's a sort of single screen gauntlet. So you get a single screen that looks that sort of gauntlet perspective, that sort of 2.5D perspective. The screen doesn't scroll or anything, it's just a single screen. And essentially this is a sort of, it's not quite a puzzle RPG type thing. I don't play RPGs, it's a really hard game to describe. You've got a single screen, I'll describe how it plays and you can make up your own mind. You've got a single screen with a set number of enemies on it, say 10 enemies. And there's a collectible item. I can't remember if it's a little person or it's just an item. It's been a while since I've played it. But you have something that you have to collect. And at the top of the screen, you start at the bottom of the screen. At the top of the screen, there is an exit bar that you have to get to with the collectible. And you have a number of players you can play as. I think there's 4, maybe 5. And each player has got a different weapon or strength, for want of a better term. So somebody's got a spear who can shoot in all directions, but it's quite slow. Another person's got a gun that can shoot in all directions, but it's quite slow. Somebody else has got a bow and arrow that can shoot in restricted directions and things. There's all that kind of stuff. So your character can shoot in certain directions, but like the bow and arrow is required to shoot on higher levels, so I think it's the only weapon that can shoot up on higher levels. So you have to pick your character depending on the screen. So like I say, you might have 10 enemies to take out, and you can do one or two things. You can either run, get the collectible, and run to the exit, in which case you will stay on that screen, but your next character will come up. You get to pick a character each time, and the next character will come up. And you have to then clear out all the enemies. So basically you have to get the collectible, kill all the enemies and get to the exit. And you can do that with one character, or you can take your time and do it with a couple of characters. If your character picks up the collectible and gets killed before they get to the exit, they drop the collectible, and your next character has to try and get the collectible to the exit, and so on and so forth. And like I say, some of the enemies are on different levels, so you need your archer to be able to shoot up and all that kind of thing. So there's sort of not RPG elements, because I don't think you level up, can't remember. But you have to have that sort of tactical thought process about which character you use to do whatever you're going to do in the level. So it's good fun, it's a sit down and give it a go type game. It's not a big thinker, it's not a straight shooter. If you just fancy a good game to play for 20 minutes, it's one to give a go. Like I say, I think it got average reviews back in the day. I don't think it was a big hit. I think it was too simple at the time when it came out, because it was based on an arcade game. You know, a lot of people by then had moved on and wanted a little bit more depth in their games and things like that. So I don't know why it got kind of average reviews. It's good fun. You know, it does get more complex as the game goes on and all that kind of stuff. But it's a good laugh. I would recommend you give it a go. Have a shot of it in an emulator or something like that. See if you fancy it. It's not expensive. You know, I think you can get that now for £3 or £4. So, yeah, worth a look. So the next game on the list is a sports game, and generally I don't do sports. Sports don't really interest me at all, but on occasion, you know, I like video game sports, and I remember buying this game from Dixon's in Edinburgh in Princess Street. I had some Christmas money, I think it was, and it was on sale while all the other games were £30 and £40. This was £9.99, and I thought, excellent, I'll have that. I didn't know anything about it, but yeah, this game is Arnold Palmer's Tournament Golf. That's easy to say, isn't it? It's a great little golf game. Now at the time, the style of this, there was a couple of golf games in the arcade that I didn't realise at the time, but later on I found out they were sort of Neo Geo games, Neo Turf Masters and things like that, where the animation on it was really nice. You know, it was pixel art. It wasn't a kind of digitized players or anything like that. But the animation was really nice and totally made up golf courses and all that kind of stuff. So Arnold Palmer's Tournament Golf, I said it right that time, is sort of like those sort of Neo Geo arcade type golf games. It's not a simulation by any means, but there is quite a lot of depth to it. You can pick your clubs at the beginning. You can make your own club, own bag, as in you can pick exactly what clubs you want. You can customize your player a little bit from memory. Can you do that? Yeah, I think you can. But anyway, you can play as a guy or a girl. Standard golf game, you pick your course. I think there's 3, maybe 5 courses. Can't quite remember, it's been a while since I played it. But you can pick your music. There's like a jazz score or just kind of sound effects or kind of chill music and all that kind of stuff. So it's very arcadey. But it's a good game. Very easy to play. It uses a sort of leaderboard mechanic where you press the button to start your power meter, it goes up, you press it again to stop it, and then it comes back and you have to hit it again to get your kind of swing, which determines whether you slice or hook the ball. But it's just good fun. It's an arcade golf game. And if you like that kind of thing, like I say, I mean, I'm not hugely into golf, you know, I've not got every Tiger Woods or anything like that, or every leaderboard or whatever. You know, I like to dip in and have a quick game on occasion. And it's good fun, you know. There's wind and all that kind of stuff. The wind affects your ball. You can change your stance. I'm just trying to remember all these things. You can change your stance so you can hook the ball into the wind. So there's a lot of kind of good mechanics in it. But at the end of the day, it's just a good arcade golf game. It's a bit of a challenge, but it's a very fair game. You know, it doesn't punish you like some golf games do on occasion. So again, you'll get that for buttons, because A, it's a sports game, and B, it's quite old. It was kind of close to launch that came out. 1990 it was launched. So yeah, it's a good little game. If you fancy a little golf game on your Mega Drive, worth a look. Not much else I can say about it really. The next game could be categorised as sports, I suppose. And it's a bit of a random game for me, but it's a very strange box art as well. Wrestle War. Now this is a fun one. I'll see if I can find the cover art, because the cover art in Japan, from memory, is the same cover except they've changed the guy's head. So in the PAL sort of European release, get the glare out of that, they changed it to that somewhat obscure looking dude. I can't remember. I think the guy in the Japanese one might have had a sort of Hulk Hogan type look, and for copyright reasons they changed it. I'll see if I can put that on screen anyway. But Wrestle War, again, launched or released at the same time as WWF was going crazy back in the 90s. You know, there were many arcade games of the WWF wrestling stuff. I've always preferred sort of arcadey, i.e. non-simulation type games. So Wrestle War is a very simple looking game. You know, there's no licensed characters or anything in it. It's just a Sega sports title. And it's kind of cartoony in its presentation, but it's great fun. There's quite a lot of depth to it. Now, I don't know anything about wrestling, you know, I couldn't tell you one end of a suplex for a pile driver or whatever. I don't know the moves, you know, but it feels like the old British wrestling. It's just a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit silly, you know, giant haystacks type stuff. So there's quite a lot of depth to it. You can bounce folk off the ropes, you can do the... Is that a clothesline they call it, where you kind of run into them, smack them in the face and knock them down and all that kind of stuff. You can do all that kind of stuff, or you can do straight punches and kicks to try and kind of knock your opponent down. There's all sorts of things you can do, but it's good fun. Just a good fun wrestling game. Now, how it holds up, if you're into wrestling, how it holds up against WWF, and I don't know. But it's the only wrestling game that I've got, and it's... You know, I haven't bought any of the WWF stuff because, like I say, I'm not really a fan of wrestling. But it's just good fun. Again, it's really cheap, and it's just a good fun wrestling game. So if you fancy something a little bit different, again, that you can pick up and just have a little bit of fun with, it's one to have a little look at and just have fun and play. Okay, so the next game is a bit more recognisable, I suppose. And it is Rambo 3. Now, Rambo 3 on the Mega Drive, I remember getting this, I rented this from our video store. That was the first sort of time I played it, and it was great because there's a game on the Mega Drive called Mercs, which was an arcade game that was ported, and it's a sort of run and gun shooter, where you're vertical scrolling sort of shooting game. You're a little soldier and you run up and you know, so it's got multi-directional scrolling and stuff. So Rambo 3 starts off like that. You've got you are Rambo and you can pick your weapons. That's one thing, you can pick your weapons. So even if you pick up an upgrade, you're not traditionally in a game. If you had a gun and you picked up a better gun, you would stick with the better gun until the ammo ran out or whatever. In this, you can choose your weapon. So you've got your knife, you've got your bow, you've got explosive arrows, you've got a machine gun. That kind of stuff. I think you've got grenades as well. But basically you run about and if you use your knife on folk, you don't alert all the other guards. But if you go in all guns blazing, then you'll get more enemies coming at you. So, you know, you can take them out with your machine gun and all that kind of stuff, but there are sort of wooden sentry towers, and it's this sort of 2.5D presentation again, which I love. But the guard towers, you can either shoot them with your machine gun, but they take forever to take down. But if you hit them with your explosive arrows, they blow up and kill the guys. And the guys all jump out of the towers and stuff, and it's all good fun. So there's that type of level, which is just good kind of runny, shooty goodness. And hey, you're Rambo at the end of the day. It's great. But there are levels interspersed where it's a sort of Cabal type, Operation Wolf type view. So sort of you're looking into the screen and the screen scrolls, but you can see your character on screen. So like Operation Wolf and stuff, you just had a crosshair target, but in this you can see Rambo sitting at the bottom. So it's a bit like Cabal, or a game I'm going to talk about, Dynamite Duke, where you kind of move your character along the bottom of the screen, but you can also move your cursor, your crosshair as well. Excuse me while I have a scratch. But yeah, so it changes to that kind of view, and you've usually got helicopters and stuff coming at you, which you have to obviously take down in that sort of perspective. So there's a few different types of levels to it. So there's a few bits of variation to the game. So it's well worth a look. The film was god awful. Rambo 3 was terrible. I love Sylvester Stallone, you know, but Rambo 3 wasn't the best. But the game is certainly good fun. You know, it's almost like a standalone. They've just used the Rambo title, the Rambo name. It could have just been a generic shooting type game. But it's quite a good use of a license, and worth a look. You know, if you've maybe passed it up in the past because it's Rambo 3 and you think the film's terrible or you don't like Sly or whatever, but as a standalone game, it's pretty good, and again, pretty cheap, I think. So yeah, worth a look. The next one should be pretty well known, and it's eSWAT, or SWAT, or whatever you want to call it. I always said eSWAT, but anyway, I was going to go into the grammar of why it should be SWAT instead of eSWAT, but I don't care. Whatever you want to call it, that game. Typical Sega of the time, sort of side-scrolling platformer, sort of Shinobi-esque. So you start off, excuse me, you start off as this cop with just a gun. So Rolling Thunder is probably the closest thing to that. I'm just trying to think how to describe the game. So it's a bit like Rolling Thunder. You've got your character that runs along and shoots. You can arrest people, and you have to run through the level and take out all the bad guys. I can't remember if there's any more to it. I can't remember if you have to actually collect stuff. It's been, again, with most of these, it's been a while since I played it, but just that good sort of arcade. It is based on an arcade game. That good arcade kind of side-scrolling platformy shooty thing. Take out all the bad guys, get to the end of the level, happy days. There's bosses and all that in it. But the interesting thing is, when you get to the end of certain levels, you get upgrades. So this was out, when was this out? 89. So, you know, RoboCop and all that was a huge hit in sort of 87, 88. That was a huge hit, and all these sort of cyborgy type films and games and all that came out were predominantly due to RoboCop. So eSWAT kind of tied into that, you know, the cop that becomes a mechanised cop. But in this, you don't die, you get a sort of exoskeleton suit. So you start off with a semi-basic one that's got like a machine gun arm and stuff like that. And as you progress through the game, the exoskeleton suit gets chunkier with more things, and you can kind of do higher jumps and all these kind of things, all these upgrades to take out the bad guys. So yeah, it gets fun as the game goes on. You know, you get more powerful weapons and that kind of stuff. There are more bad guys to dispatch. It's got quite a nice. In Shinobi, you could jump from the bottom of the ground to the top, and in this, you don't jump, but there's sort of a plane thing going on. So where normally you're just walking along the screen, in this you can jump behind objects. So you'll see the screen scrolling, but you'll be behind a wall or something like that. So there's bits of levels that you have to sort of go into doors to get behind places that you haven't been before. So it's pretty cool. There's quite a lot of kind of stuff, quite a lot of depth to the game, which is good. So again, if you like that sort of side-scrolling platform shooty, Rolling Thunder, Shinobi-esque type game, eSWAT is, I'm going to call it eSWAT, is worth a look. And again, not expensive. I think the most that you'll pay for any of these games is about a tenner. Most of them are cheaper than that. Especially the next one I'm going to show you. Remember I said they weren't all great games. The next one that I've picked is Pit Fighter. Now, a lot of you will probably be groaning at the screen right now, and Pit Fighter, how could you pick that abomination? I remember playing the Pit Fighter arcade game in Leisureland Arcade in Edinburgh, up the bridges, as we called it. And it was obviously at the time, sort of Mortal Kombat time, everybody jumped onto the let's do digitised characters, which I hated. I hated that whole digitised thing. Mortal Kombat was pretty cool. It was the first one to really do it, as far as I can remember. But it was fantastic at the time. The trouble is that everybody else that did it really poorly. So, you know, they were doing it just because it was the thing to do. You know, and you got games like Operation Wolf 3 and that god-awful Aerosmith light gun game, I can't even remember what it's called, Revolution X, where you all had these digitised characters and it just looked terrible. Area 51. I don't know why all these light gun shooters use digitised characters. Anyway, that was a total tangent. Pit Fighter. I quite liked it. I was hugely into my martial arts when I was a kid, as most 80s kids were. You know, the Karate Kid and ninja movies and all that. Everybody went daft for it. So, you know, there's 3 characters in Pit Fighter. If you've never played it, you might consider yourself lucky. But there's 3 characters in it. There's a kickboxer, a karate guy, and a wrestler. Just to sum up the 80s in one video game. But yeah, you can pick your fighter, and each of them have strengths and weaknesses. The wrestler, for example, is just a big lumbering idiot who can't do anything. He's just terrible. He's strong, but you know, his kick just looks terrible, and he walks about looking like he's shit himself all the time. So my favourite is it Kato, I think, is a kickboxer, because he's got a cracking special move. Basically, you had a punch, kick, and did you have a jump button? Yeah, punch, kick, and jump. But if you pressed all 3 of them, you did a sort of special move. And is it Kato or Tai? It's going to annoy me. One of them's a karate guy, one of them's a kickboxer. Whoever the kickboxer is anyway, is the guy that I usually go. But when you press the 3 buttons, the kickboxer dude does this kind of triple spin kick thing, which is pretty good for knocking down your enemies. So the basic game is you are faced against an opponent who you have to take down all their energy. And you can do that by just pummeling them, you know, kicking and punching in the traditional manner. But you get it's not a violence bonus, is it savage bonus? Basically, if you knock them down, you can, if you go close to them, you can either kind of like heal them. You basically do a kick and drop your heel into them, or you can kind of kneel down and elbow them and stuff. It's, again, it sounds really violent, but it's quite comical in Pit Fighter. So if you basically hit them while they're down, you get bonus points, and you can pick up bits of scenery. There's chairs and boxes and that you can throw at them. Again, if they're on the deck, when you hit them with it, you can get more sort of savage brutality bonus. That's what they call it, brutality bonus. So if you win the fight, you get money at the end of the day, and if you get lots of money, then you're great. Happy days. And every couple of levels you do can't remember what they call it, but you basically fight a version of yourself. And the aim of that is the first to knock the opponent down 3 times. It's 3 KOs basically. Wins that round. So it's just a one-on-one fighter, but the screen, you can kind of move about the screen. It's not a static plane like Mortal Kombat. And you can kick them into the crowd, and the crowd push them out and all that. So there's fun elements to it, and I think it's a fun game. You know, it's, if you can look past how dodgy it looks, especially on the Mega Drive, unfortunately. You know, they did their best, but the sprites are quite small, and there's animation frames missing. There was hardly any animation in the arcade game, and they've dropped a couple of frames of animation in the Mega Drive version. But again, it's one I've got rose tinted. Excuse me. Dear me, I've got rose tinted glasses for it. My pal and I used to play it all the time, you know, and it's good fun. But it's just one of these Tengen Atari games that they did back in the day. So it's worth a look for a fun digitized fighter that's going to cost you, you know, a couple of quid. Most people will probably try and give that away because it's quite poor. But if you've got nostalgia for it, it's a good fun game. So yeah, okay. And talking about poor games, I briefly mentioned this before, and this has got the funniest cover art ever. I don't know what the Japanese version was like. I'll maybe try and find the Japanese cover version, but the PAL cover version is just terrible. So the game's called Dynamite Duke. Look at that. The guy's obviously trying to look aggressive and hard, but he's got a Frank Spencer beret on, and he just looks as if he's chewing something that he shouldn't be. Anyway, so Dynamite Duke. Don't know if this was based on an arcade game. Was it? I can't remember. I think it was actually. But there was a spate of games that came out in the arcades around the Operation Wolf era. So you've got the side-scrolling sort of enemies coming at you, But there was some games like Cabal, Dynamite Duke, and Rambo did it. There was a Rambo 3 arcade game as well that did it, where you could sort of see your character on screen. So, you know, your character kind of moved about and you could move them to get out of the way, bullets and whatever else. But you could also move your crosshair to shoot the bad guys. So Dynamite Duke was one of those games, and again, this was one that I rented out at the video shop, and I used to rent it quite a lot because it's terrible, but it's good fun. Because there's the shooting sort of stages where you have to shoot everything that moves basically, and you can shoot crates and things to get better weapons, shotguns and high-speed machine guns and extra bullets and first aid kits and all that kind of stuff, all the usual stuff. You know how these games work. But there's planes and tanks and all sorts of stuff that you have to take down, and you've got the Dynamite Duke. It's basically a sort of special weapon, a bomb thing that you can basically charge up, and he does this sort of super punch that takes out everything on screen, which is remarkably silly, but you know, who cares, it's good fun. So you do the whole scrolling level thing, and then it changes to a sort of boss fight essentially, where this guy will jump back and forth and try and hit you, and you can punch or shoot and kick as well, and you can do uppercuts and all sorts of things, so it gets a bit bizarre. But you can charge up and do these dynamite punches and stuff like that. So there's different elements to the game, a bit like Rambo, but slightly different. There's different elements to the game, which is worth a look. You know, it's something different if you've never played anything like that before. There was a few games on the Neo Geo, Cross Swords and Super Spy, I think it was called, that employ the same sort of mechanic. So there was a spate of these games back in the day. Dynamite Duke was the first one that I actually played, and it was on the Mega Drive. So it's good fun, and again, you'll pay a couple of quid for that. Primarily because people pick it up and look at the cover art and think that looks shocking, I'm not even going to touch that. But it's good fun. It's worth having a play. You know, something a little bit different. And the last game that I'm going to talk about is another film license. Predator 2. Try and get that without glare. Predator 2. Film was okay, but the Mega Drive game is pretty good. Now, interestingly, there was a few Predator 2 games came out on different formats. So I remember on the 8-bits, the Predator 2 game looked like Dynamite Duke that I've just spoken about, the sort of person Operation Wolf type game. That is a 2.5D scroller, where you run about and it's very gritty, it's very dark, and I mean in its atmosphere, not as in you can't see anything. But basically you run about, you're a cop, and you run about the city, which is run by drugs barons and all that kind of stuff. And you know, there are people lying about in the gutters and things, basically smacked out their heads. And there's drug addicts trying to attack you and all that kind of stuff. But you have to search to find collectibles. You can get different guns and all that kind of thing. And I can't actually remember what the hell you do on a level to get out of it, but you have to. I'm sure there's certain things you have to pick up. But the cool thing is, if you stand still, you see the predator. You see the three little dots come zooming in on the screen and start tracking you, because the predator will shoot you if you stand still long enough. So most of the game is kind of fighting drugs barons and bad guys, which you have to take out. I can't remember actually ever fighting the predator. I don't know if that only comes at the end of it, much like in the movie. You know, the predator was kind of tracking these guys, but they didn't really see him until the end of the movie. So I think it might be the same kind of thing. I can't from memory ever remember seeing the predator. I remember getting to rooftops and things. I think you might be close at that point. The only experience of the predator you actually have is the three little tracking dots that come and try and shoot you. I should stand still and see what happens. I've never actually seen what happens when he shoots you, because usually when you see them you start running. But again, a sort of 2.5D scrolling screen running about, you collect things. Looks pretty cool. It's very gritty. Can't remember if it's based in New York or Chicago or something like that, but there's nice little elements like newspapers blowing about in the wind and things like that, and bits of rubbish lying about. So the graphics are really nice, and it sets a really nice atmosphere. But well worth a look. And again, you know, you'll get that for a couple of pounds. It's not a high value game. So yeah. So anyway, that's a few random Mega Drive games that I quite enjoy. That hopefully you might, you know, maybe there's something in that pile that you go, oh, I quite fancy having a look at that, you know, instead of going, those were all shit, Dave, you've got horrible taste in games. Like I say, some of those I know they're terrible games, you know, and if I didn't have the nostalgia for them, I would just be going, those are god awful. But some of them are genuinely good games that are just usually overlooked for some reason. So, well worth a quick check out. So, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you'll find something new that you fancy playing. And yeah, thanks for watching. Comment, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.